Welcome to the Raw Blog. In this episode, I want to provide instruction around a basic understanding relative to spiritual practices, and that is describing what enlightenment is. I often introduce myself on my Worthiness Wednesdays episodes as the Enlightenment guy. And so in order to put that into perspective, I want to describe what enlightenment is. But first, a quick announcement. I want to offer deep appreciation to those people who have subscribed to this YouTube channel. As a result of your subscription, YouTube has unlocked the opportunity for me to do live videos. And so this has been part of my plan. I'm going to be moving these Raw Blog Friday videos to Sunday morning, and they will occur as YouTube lives instead of pre-recorded videos. I'll still be providing instruction on these Raw Blog videos, but because they'll also be live, you'll have an opportunity to interact with me and ask questions if you like. So thank you for those people who have subscribed and allowed me to unlock the live feature. I deeply appreciate that. So, what is enlightenment? From the perspective of the positively focused practice, it is achieving a state of clarity, what we call having the big picture. The big picture is the perspective from which you can perceive in the same way that all that is perceiving, which is that everything going on this planet is positive. Now that sets up an interesting dichotomy, doesn't it, with regard to being enlightened versus not being enlightened. With the bigger picture, you're aligned with your broader perspective, which is you. It's not God, it's not something outside of you. And you're also able to see from or through your broader perspective. You're able to see what's going on this planet through your broader perspective, and as a result, you see everything as positive. Any other perspective is distortion. I'm going to put up, in preparation for this video, I screen captured a couple of definitions for what enlightenment is. And just looking through them, I'm going to put them on the screen for you. The dictionary defines enlightenment as a final blessed state marked by the absence of desire or suffering. That isn't really enlightenment because there is no final state. Enlightenment, as any other state of being in which you are aligned with all that is a constant state of evolving. And so achieving enlightenment is not really possible because you're constantly becoming more, which means you're an eternal being. And so if you're having the bigger picture, that bigger picture is constantly expanding because you're constantly expanding. And so this definition from the dictionary of what enlightenment is not accurate because it is not a final blessed state. It is an ongoing expansionary state. So then I also went into the dictionary and pulled up a definition for enlightened, the adjective, and it says free from ignorance or misinformation, based on full comprehension of the problems involved. And this also is somewhat of a distortion because as you're moving through your own personal expansion and the expansion of all that is, which is what you're doing as an eternal being, you're constantly moving into or moving through more and more, let's call it, contrasting experiences. And those contrasting experiences are going to bring distortion. This is why enlightenment is an ongoing expansionary process. not something that you achieve in one moment. And so as you move through achieving, or realizing is a better word, a state or a condition or vibration of enlightenment, which is clarity, receiving the big picture, then you move into greater levels of awareness. And in those greater levels of awareness, you move into contrast, which then prompts from within you, from your enlightened state, an even greater desire to perceive more of all that is. And so as you're growing, basically. And so as you're moving through this state of enlightenment, this condition of being enlightened, you're constantly moving into more and more greater and greater states of clarity and awareness. And this is why enlightenment is not a final state, and being enlightened doesn't necessarily mean being freed from anything. The last thing I looked up was an AI version of enlightenment, which is a much more detailed and accurate characteristic of what enlightenment is. And it reminds me of a passage in the Lotus Sutra where the Buddha is describing the difference between a common mortal and a Buddha. And if you look at I've put this on screen, if you look at the bottom of this AI overview, this is a beautiful description of what enlightenment is. Enlightenment is the state of the Buddha. The Buddha is an ordinary person who has perceived themselves as a Buddha. In other words, they're able to perceive themselves and the world around them from the perspective of their broader perspective. They have the bigger picture. And so as a result of that, they achieve a certain state of being. Now, this certain state of being, because it is a state of alignment, if you've watched my earlier Raw Blog episodes, you're going to understand what I'm about to say. Because this is a state of because this is a state of alignment, you're going to have an emotional response to that state, that frequency alignment. And this is where the word bliss comes in. In the state of alignment, you're very, very high on the emotional scale. Your emotions come to you or manifest as a result of the frequency that you tune to. Often, since most people can't perceive frequency, thoughts and beliefs are downstream versions of vibrational frequency. And so when you entertain a thought or a belief that is aligned with your broader perspective, you feel an emotion. When you align with a thought or belief that is not consistent with your broader perspective's understanding, you also perceive an emotion, and that emotion is negative. So in a state of clarity and awareness where you have the bigger picture and you're seeing the world around you from your broader perspective, which means you're seeing it as ultimately positive, you're in a high vibrational frequency. And at that high vibrational frequency, you manifest for yourself an internal manifestation. And that internal manifestation is the emotion. And the emotion you feel when you've realized this high vibrational state that we're calling enlightenment, the emotion you feel is joy, freedom, appreciation, love, mostly self-love. But that extends to everyone and everything, because you realize in this state that everything and everyone that you're perceiving is a projection, a reflection of your own state. So enlightenment is nothing more than alignment to the perspective that you have from non-physical that allows you to perceive from a very high vibrational frequency what you are, what's going on in the world, and clarity of your own state as the creator of all of that. And in that state of awareness, you create for yourself an emotional response to that state of awareness, which I've just described. There's one other thing about enlightenment that needs to be discussed. And the Buddha talks about this in his description of his own enlightenment. When you achieve this very high state of vibration in any given moment, or when you're chronically at that high vibration, not only are you experiencing the emotions of calm, joy, freedom, etc., but you also come into clarity of all that you are. You're more than a human being, you realize. And in that state of awareness, you are able to perceive through your inner senses that vision, hearing, taste, smell, touch, those senses that you have that go beyond your physical counterparts of senses. So like when you're dreaming, it's not really dreaming, you're visiting non-physical when you sleep. You don't take your body with you, and yet in your dreams you're able to perceive with sight, sound, or sight, hearing, touch, smell, etc. So when you achieve this high state of vibration that I'm calling enlightenment, and you have the bigger picture, your consciousness expands. Your ego, I've described that in a previous Raw Blog episode too. Your ego is a function. Your ego relaxes, which allows you then to perceive beyond physical reality. Your ego is a function that is designed to focus you into physical reality so that you perceive physical reality as all that is, and also perceive your physical reality as separate from you, including other people. But when you achieve this state of enlightenment, that function of your ego begins to soften. And as it softens, you're able to perceive beyond physical reality. And that is where alternate dimension travel experiences, astral travel experiences, and then other supernatural skills such as extrasensory perception, remote viewing, and even shape-shifting come into play. At the most extreme versions of those abilities are teleportation and shape-shifting. And so you can see that this state of enlightenment is nothing more than a high vibrational state established as a chronic state within you. It comes, like that AI definition said, with practice. You're basically polishing yourself as a common mortal in order to achieve that Buddha-like state of being, that Buddha-like vibration. It's a high vibration that we're calling enlightenment. And there you perceive the bigger picture of all that is. And when you achieve that bigger picture, you trigger a softening of the ego function, which then allows you to have what people will call supernatural or impossible abilities. So all this is to say that enlightenment is nothing special. It's rare. It's rare because most human beings believe enlightenment takes a lot of work. It does take some effort, but enlightenment is your natural state. So the effort is about uncovering that natural state through the soothing of distortion. So as I said, enlightenment is nothing special. It is your natural state. But you can see that the majority of human beings are moving through the world focused in their physical reality as if that's all there is. So the majority of human beings are in a state of ego focus, and therefore they experience life as a common mortal instead of as an enlightened person. In the positively focused practice, which is the framework of practices I've put together in order to help individuals achieve or realize this natural state of enlightenment, we learn how to soothe the thoughts and beliefs and the chronic negative momentum that is obscuring our natural enlightened state. And gradually, as we soothe that momentum and as we alter our way of perceiving the world, then naturally emerges this enlightened state. It is very similar to what I call the state of worthiness, but it's not the same thing. The state of worthiness is the natural realization that you are at the center of and loved by the universe, and the universe is giving everything to you without any action or effort on your part. Enlightenment is realization that you are all that all that is you, and that in that state of all that is awareness, you recognize all that is good, including you. And when you're in that state, as I said before, you realize for yourself an emotional state that feels like joy, freedom, appreciation, and you could say bliss. So that's what enlightenment is. It's available to all of us because it is our natural state. Want to learn more? Feel free to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You can also become a client if you wish by visiting my website at positivelyfocused.co. Or there are lots of other people out there who are offering their versions of what I offer here. Whether you do any of those steps or not, I thank you for watching. I do this for myself, though. I really enjoy amplifying my own enlightenment by sharing what I know with others. And speaking of sharing what I know with others, I'll see you in the next video in which I'll share even more. And perhaps I'll see you in my first live, which I will schedule in just a little while.